Well, another reporter has been fired for telling the truth. We're going to look at what she was beginning to uncover at a government facility involving the egregious abuse of human beings and what has happened to this reporter, what she's doing now. It just made national news today. We're also going to jump into the latest on the House Speaker race and why some of the most adamant opponents of Kevin McCarthy are actually happy today. Matt Gaetz is saying that they were able to whittle McCarthy's power down to just a symbolic role. Matt Gaetz even is happy. We're going to jump into what's really happening, what's coming up today, what's kicking off right now today in regards to our new 118th Congress. Also, another college basketball player has collapsed. Going to show you the video. Also, we have the first ever honeybee vaccine. Why do honeybees need to be vaccinated? And this is a very unique vaccine. The vaccine goes to the ovaries of the bee. What's going on here? We're gonna jump into that and more if we have time. Checking your comments. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, we got people from Australia. Well, I'll be sure to read any super chats as we go along, as this is live. Okay, let me show you the national headline here on the reporter fired for telling the truth. West Virginia journalist fired after investigating alleged abuse at state facilities. New York Post reporting a West Virginia journalist was fired last month after exposing alleged abuse of disabled people at the state's health agency. Amelia Farrell nicely said she had been warned to stop reporting on allegations that the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources was hiding information on the treatment of disabled persons in state care in the weeks before she was let go of her job. So, just what was this government facility doing to these people? I'll show you her. I will show you the banned report that basically got her fired. It's crazy. Before we jump into it, shout out to the sponsor of my coverage. Noble Gold Investments is pleased to let you know that gold is the best investment class of 2022. According to longtermtrends.net, gold has actually outperformed the S&P 500, Dow, and Bitcoin for 2022. So what are you waiting for? Open a gold IRA or silver IRA with Noble Gold Investments this month and receive a free quarter ounce American Eagle gold coin with every qualifying IRA of $50,000. You can't go wrong with Noble Gold Investments and their thousands of five-star reviews. There's always a risk of with any investment. No guarantee of any kind, but gold is a pretty great bet. Okay, let me show you Amelia's tweet. She tweeted that she had been let go for covering what's actually happening in West Virginia and the egregious activity. Amelia nicely tweeted December 28th, I was let go from my job at West Virginia Public Broadcasting last week following threats from the Department of Health and Human Resources about my reporting on the Department of Health and Human Resources treatment of people with disabilities. It must not be overlooked that this reporting focused on some of the most vulnerable people who are in state-run facilities. Steve, another reporter, contacted me yesterday with a full story about the timeline of events, as some of it was done via government email accounts. I appreciate his careful reporting on the state government. Thank you for asking me for comment, and please support him. I'll show you what he broke down what actually happened to this girl. But she says, I'm deeply concerned about the state of West Virginia media. Guys, I'm deeply concerned about the state of American media, period. But she's getting a taste of it right there in West Virginia. It is our job, she says, as reporters to watch and report on decision makers. Exactly. We're the fourth estate. We learned this in journalism school. I don't know why Amelia is one of so few who are willing to do this and dig into things that the government buddies of the media don't want us to dig into. But there she was. She says it's our job to report, to watch and report on decision makers. In our state, one of the poorest, not everyone can drive to the Capitol where decisions are being made. Not everyone has internet access to streaming meetings. I'm looking for a job or funding to continue my investigative work here in West Virginia. I want to remain here in my home state and report, especially on child welfare issues. She's digging into that now that she's left her previous outlet. She gives her email, ameliafarrellnews@gmail.com. She said, "Thank you for the support and kind words. Thanks for my husband, a passionate First Amendment supporter, and my three daughters who are the perfect team." Um, so that's how she announced that she had been let go for actually covering the truth. Uh, Let me show you the actual report that got her banned, got her, to lose her job. Here she is working for public radio.
Health Department. Amelia Nicely reports.
Reports of people with disabilities being strangled, being forced to use the bathroom outside, and dying from inappropriate nutrition got the attention of West Virginia lawmakers recently. Even worse, there were efforts to cover it up. These people with disabilities were, by state law, under the care of the West Virginia Department of Health and Human Resources. Top lawmakers and an attorney with Disability Rights West Virginia say there is probable cause to believe DHHR is aware of patient mistreatment and abuse, along with staffing issues at a state-run psychiatric facility. Senate President Craig Blair sent a letter in October to Governor Jim Justice outlining abuse suffered by adults and children with disabilities who are under DHHR's protection.
So there you go. So the government, funded by our federal government, Virginia or West Virginia, I guess they get something like $7 billion from our federal government to run this health department. It's insane, and they are strangling their mentally ill children and adults. These people must use the bathroom outside and even die of inappropriate nutrition. She attaches the documentation here. Now, the same health department reached out to her news outlet and said, "We are demanding a full retraction of what you guys have reported." And initially, her news department said, "No, we're going to keep this up." They just kept it up. As you can see, it's still up today. But a few days later, she was banned from covering that health department ever again, as reported in the local media in tedious detail here. This is Amelia. I just thought it was very interesting because this is the exact same scenario that played out with me at Fox, where I covered treatment of patients in the pandemic, and people objected to me covering what was actually the treatments that were actually being used at a popular hospital there in Houston. And so my bosses say, "We're going to leave up all your coverage. We're going to leave it all up, but you heretofore you are banned from covering this again." For inexplicable reasons. I hadn't done anything wrong but report what was actually happening. So it's interesting. I'm seeing a pattern of media outlets doing something like this. So that way they can't be blamed for censoring. We didn't retract or take down our article, though. But going forward, for some reason, we're not letting you know what's actually happening. So here it is. She covers it November 3rd. November 10th, the government health department there is asking, "Please hide our dirt. Please delete your article." But the story stays up. December 6th, she covers the West Virginia Legislature's Joint Committee on Health, where lawmakers hear from Disability Rights West Virginia's legal director talking about this issue. That's when she was told she can no longer cover the Department of Health and Human Resources. She is cut off from that coverage inexplicably. So on December 15th, she writes a letter to HR complaining about this. I reached out to HR as well when I started to be disciplined for doing journalism. And as we know, Amelia and I had the same fate. We were both fired from our outlets. HR is not there to actually help innocent people who are just doing their job, as I learned, and it appears Amelia learned as well. Anyway, it says here that she was informed on December 20th by her supervisor at West Virginia Public Broadcasting that they will no longer require her services. Now, West Virginia Public Broadcasting is funded, it's publicly funded. So it's very clear that, I mean, since their money comes from the government, that their reporting would be more likely to align with the government's special interests. And that's why I and others take public broadcasting reporting with a grain of salt. But as you can see, and I keep saying this, like, the faces on the news a lot of times are like, they are in it for the right reasons. They have a good heart and they want to get the truth out, but they're getting muzzled by the leadership of these newsrooms. And in this case, her news director was even on her side, but they were all shut down by the higher ups at her news outlet. But it's so it's not surprising to see something like this happen at a public broadcasting, publicly funded news outlet. When you see it happen at like my outlet and others that we're learning more and more, it's happening everywhere. The censorship of reporters who are actually trying to, hold public officials accountable or shed light on new developments in a pandemic. So really concerning times, and crazy to see that this unfortunately has happened to another journalist. And just after her news department had sent an email to the state legislature saying, yeah, Amelia is definitely going to be covering the next legislative session beginning in January, because she plays a key role in that sort of coverage. And then someone else higher up in the company or in the outlet says, never mind, she's not going to need press credentials for that anymore. And then a few days later, she's fired. Crying shame. Let me give you guys a glance at what Amelia is covering nowadays. She hasn't missed a beat. She's continuing to cover news despite her corrupt former outlet, West Virginia Public Broadcasting. Just tweeting today, presentations today in the Joint Committee on Children and Families focuses on teens aging out of West Virginia foster care and the connection to human trafficking. Jeremiah Samples told lawmakers that in 2020, 53 children ran away from foster care. In 2021, that number climbed to 268. Amelia has been covering a lot of issues associated with child abuse. And as you'll recall, the story that got her fired also mentions that it was children that were also being abused in that facility. People getting strangled by government employees. So why is a reporter who is trying to protect children getting fired? I'm glad that she's still continuing to cover the news after this. She actually, latest update on her, she landed another job. Look at this. Good news, y'all. Register Herald has hired me to write about the legislative session, including developments with the state health department. Back to work next week. Support local news. She tweeted last week, so she's working again this week. So that's great. She's actually going to be able to cover the same state health department that West Virginia Public Broadcasting banned her from. This corrupt health department can't get away from her, unfortunately for them. And fortunately for us truth seekers, she's going to continue to dig into the creepy things that are happening to innocent, vulnerable children and adults in West Virginia. So I'm glad to see that outcome for her. I have reached out to her to see if she wants to do an interview. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much for the super chat. Kevin, did you receive the Christmas card I sent to your P.O. box? Oh my gosh, you sent one. Guess what? I'm in between P.O. boxes right now. That one's shut down and I'm trying to activate my new one. So that letter might get returned to you, unfortunately. But thank you so much for sending me one. That is very nice of you. Okay, I want to jump into the House Speaker race because, as we know, it went to 15 rounds. I mean, I was covering it before the 15th round on Friday, so just the update now that it's Monday. Kevin McCarthy was elected House Speaker just before midnight in the 15th round of voting. The last time that a House Speaker election took this long was 1859. So this was a very unique scenario. And there were indeed 6 members of the House, six patriots, far right, as the New York Times calls them, who refused to the very end to vote for Kevin McCarthy. They never voted for Kevin McCarthy. But what they did do in the 15th round, these 6 House members, they voted present instead of voting for another member. And by voting present, they gave McCarthy the majority he needed to become elected anyway. So by doing that, they kind of did vote for him, but they can say with a clear conscience that they never voted for Kevin McCarthy. And these 6 members seem to be pretty happy today because apparently negotiations in between every round of voting were beneficial enough for Freedom Caucus members that they really feel that they whittled down Kevin McCarthy's power. And, Matt Gaetz is saying it's more of like a symbolic role that McCarthy has now rather than like dictator of the House. But there's going to be a lot more representation of the American people by empowering each of the people's representatives across committees after the negotiations that were worked out over 15 rounds of voting. And I will show you a little clip that I tweeted of Representative Lauren Boebert and then Matt Gaetz talking about some of the concessions that McCarthy gave to them, giving them wins. We'll see if these wins really do play out the way that they want to. But the Gaetz, Boebert, and others considered far right freedom lovers are pretty happy today. And Gaetz and Boebert are 2 of the 6 who never voted for Kevin, just voted present in that final round. So here's what I tweeted.
Because we stood strong and held our ground. We will now have the opportunity to vote on term limits. Because we stood strong, we will vote on border security. Because we stood strong, we won't be forced to vote on 1,000-page bills in the dead of night without having time to read them.
So is it worth it all going 15 rounds to elect a speaker?
Absolutely. We got concessions that really were being rejected as early as Monday when it comes to being able to read legislation 72 hours before its adoption, individual appropriations bills, and ultimately what we negotiated ensures that we will never again have a circumstance like this omnibus spending legislation, because bills will have to comport to a single subject. There will be germanity requirements on amendments. And so it's going to be an open process, a transparent process. I'm thrilled at where the House of Representatives is today.
You were quoted as saying the construct of these rules concessions functionally turn the speakership into a ceremonial position. Do you mean that?
Well, Speaker McCarthy is our speaker, and long live the speaker. I look forward to working closely with him, but he did agree, to his great credit, to democratize power to the membership. Oftentimes, these committees that decide what bills come to the floor, what the spending paradigm is, they're controlled just by people loyal to the speaker. Now what we have is a real representation of all of the different viewpoints within our conference. On the Rules Committee, on the Appropriations Committee, we fought hard to get agreements to have conservatives on those committees, to have our budget hawks on appropriations, and I can't wait to see what we're able to do when we unlock the potential of all of our members going forward.
What about the concern that this delayed process weakened him? And to recap, we've got a Democrat in the White House. We've got Democrats running the United States Senate. Don't you need him to be as strong as possible?
Well, I think the way to have a strong Republican position on a lot of these issues is to have strong Republicans on the most relevant committees. And I don't really get the critique that taking from Tuesday to Friday to work this out puts the Republican majority in peril. I mean, you know, Mike, that in the summer, the entire Congress takes like 6 weeks off where we're not even around at all. So to take 4 days to figure out who's going to be second in line to the presidency and to ensure that we have.
Yeah, so he's saying even though Kevin is weakened, it's okay because a bunch of other Republicans are empowered now through this concession that they were able to get Kevin to make in order for certain members to vote for him. So the next step is happening beginning just about around now, where the House will debate and vote on the rules for the 118th Congress, as well as legislation to rescind certain funding for the IRS, as reported by C-SPAN. So we'll see how those rules actually do get set, I guess, today. But Kevin promised these concessions where rules are going to go in the favor of freedom loving patriots, of more conservatives. As you can see, Gates is quite optimistic. I'll show you something Andy Biggs posted as well. He was another one of the 6 who never voted for Kevin, even down to the last 15th round. He retweets Matt Rosendale of Montana, another one of the 6 who never voted for Kevin. And they are showing one thing they're really hoping to reform as they got these concessions to reform the rules. Matt Rosendale tweeting, if anyone questioning how Congress has been operating, this video shows S4119 passing the House by voice in a nearly empty chamber. It'll add $93 million in spending by 2025. The rules reforms that we agreed to last week will move us closer to eliminating these practices. So look at the empty chamber, and a bunch of taxpayer dollars are just being rammed through anyway, without members of Congress even voting it, without my and your representatives that we elected to vote on this stuff even being in the chamber. How does that happen? Well, these Freedom Caucus people and the 20 Patriots want to shut down rules that allow this bogus sort of passage of bills that actually doesn't represent the people. But notice how he said the rules reforms last week will move us closer to eliminating these practices. Closer is not the elimination of the practices. So I think a lot of people are cautiously optimistic, and others are just straight up pessimistic, saying, no, this is, it's all talk, and we're not actually going to see changes that represent the best interests of the American people. We will have to see. Time will tell, but I think tonight will tell us a lot. We'll see. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, a lot of people were really surprised that she was all Team McCarthy, because she was all about draining the swamp, and McCarthy has been a part of the swamp forever. Well, she was interviewed about this on Fox, and she actually agreed that Joe Biden was legitimately elected president. It's the new Marjorie Taylor Greene.
The same people that conservatives were holding up in high esteem don't necessarily have those voting records, while they're at the same time criticizing Kevin McCarthy, who does. Right. Kevin McCarthy did object on January 6th, and he's been a top target of the Democrats and the January 6th committee. So do you believe that Joe Biden is a legitimately elected president? Of course Joe Biden's the president. That's always a silly question. Okay, I wasn't trying to be silly. I was trying to just clarify.
Oh, my goodness. I would say my answer would be that we can't tell whether he was legitimately elected because we are prevented from fully examining the immense piles of evidence that continue to get uncovered. They get uncovered, censored, shove it away. Don't put any time or money into investigating. And definitely don't fix it. Definitely don't do any election integrity reform. So that would be my answer, unlike Marjorie saying he was legitimately elected. I would say, no, we don't have the information to tell whether he was, sadly. So it's just a giant question mark to this day. Because there's little independent journalists like me grabbing bits and pieces of insanely alarming things that went down in the elections, such as definitely what I've uncovered in Wisconsin, even some insane things that happened here in Texas, and of course, Arizona and other places. But we can only do so much in pulling these little parts together and saying how widespread actually is this. Of course, then you look at the Connect issue associated with what True the Vote was uncovering. And you wonder about China's involvement. And it's like, we got all these pieces, but no one with the big resources to, really get bigger answers is willing to do so. And therefore, we can't tell whether he was legitimately elected. And it's interesting that Marjorie apparently now believes that the 2020 election was solid and went off without a hitch. And it's duh that he was legitimately elected. But what led the anchor there to ask that question is that she said that Kevin McCarthy actually objected on January 6th, 2 years ago, which I didn't realize, but it's true. And I have the New York Times article that is breaking down the 139 Republicans in the House who objected to the certification of the Electoral College count. They showcase all of these people right here, and you can see that's Kevin McCarthy right there. He is one of the 139 who apparently objected on January 6th and said, let's send this back for further review. Let's delay this 2 weeks and figure out whether every vote is really being counted and whether any scam votes are in there. I didn't realize Kevin McCarthy was did that. So, I mean, kudos to Marjorie for highlighting that about Kevin McCarthy. Makes him a little less swampy, I guess. Anyway, so that was my update on the House Speaker race, and we'll have to tune in this evening as they vote on the rules and see whether the rules for the new Congress really do go in our favor. All right, let's talk about this new latest basketball player, latest athlete to collapse on the court. A lot of people are abuzz about this today. Let me show you a local news report. ODU player collapses during game. They start off by talking about Damar Hamlin, which shout out to Damar. What a miraculous recovery. I think all the prayers worked. And reports are he was released from the hospital today. So this guy is catching us up on Damar. And then he's like, in local news, it also happened here.
Statement on Instagram today thanking the fans for their support. This afternoon, a scary and similar situation seemed to hit a little closer to home regarding the Old Dominion men's basketball team in their game at Georgia Southern today. Now keep in mind, this video we're about to show you may be hard to watch. First half of their game today. Keep your eyes on number 3, right side of your screen. That's Emo Esian, sophomore guard, stops, then slowly goes down to the ground. Players from both teams visibly upset after watching. Take a look. Number of ODU players were seen crying, looking on, and hoping their teammate was okay. Thankfully, trainers from both schools were able to get Emo back on his feet. He was evaluated, responsive, and rejoined the team in the locker room at the half and even sat with the team on the bench the rest of the game. An update on him just a little bit.
Wow. He was another number 3. Damar Hamlin was also number 3. But, like I said, these things like this did happen prior to the pandemic, but I agree they seem to be happening more since the pandemic occurred. Since the pandemic came around and all the new pharmaceuticals were forced on people, we're seeing a lot of heart issues, which this ABC News article, I got to show this real quick, came through my feed today. Rise in heart disease may be explained by extreme weather conditions, a study shows. It's not clear why temperature shifts correlate with more heart attacks. Maybe because they don't. That is the most laughable article. But they're saying, yeah, remember heat stroke? Heat stroke is a thing. And so we think that maybe this is all just heat stroke. Like Damar maybe had heat stroke. This basketball player in the air-conditioned facility had heat stroke. Who knows? But pretty insane that they're literally saying, trying to connect climate change to heart disease. And I'm just going to remind people the number one thing associated with heart disease is what you eat. So just be really leery when all the attention I get that the left is coming up with these weird ideas like, oh, the climate change is affecting your heart, but the right is so focused on a certain pharmaceutical as the cause that we may be missing other major things that are causes of giant health issues. Be very careful about foods and changes in the foods. And we had Bill Gates telling us to eat more corn a few months ago. Could corn be good or bad for you? How are they processing corn differently? How are they growing corn differently? Just be very aware. Now is a time to really be careful about what you're eating, the environment you're in everything, and not just say, I'm staying away from needles, so I'm good, and just keep your eyes open to the truth anywhere. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. I'm glad that player was able to get back up and play. It's terrible to see people get hurt like that. So good for him that it was not too serious, and we're not sure what actually caused him to collapse. Okay, look at this latest development. Speaking of needles, we have an update from CNN saying that the first honeybee vaccine has been invented. The USDA, the first ever vaccine for honeybees, has been approved by the USDA. The United States Department of Agriculture has approved the first ever vaccine for honeybees to prevent American foul brood disease, a fatal bacterial disease that can destroy honeybee colonies. It's interesting. Ooh, they got a bat there. Wildlife rehabilitator rescued over 1,600 bats. Okay, so they are saying we hope the availability of this product will aid in the prevention and or treatment of the disease because honeybees they have a central role in American agriculture. A huge amount of agriculture would cease to exist, I guess, because honeybees can't pollinate all the agricultural plants. So without bees, the foods that you eat also cease to exist. So this is crazy. So they're like, okay, we got to vaccinate these bees so that you can eat because bees are getting more and more disease. We have other articles that talk about how all the pesticides being used in agriculture are actually weakening bees' immune systems, causing them to be more susceptible to disease. But rather than get rid of the harmful pesticides that are not good for humans either, they're going to continue those pesticides, which hurt humans, hurt bees, and then go on to hurt the agriculture. And just add a strange vaccine instead. And why is this vaccine strange? Look at how it works. They said, unlike traditional vaccines, the honeybee vaccine isn't injected with a syringe. Instead, it's mixed into queen feed, which the worker bees consume. According to Dallin's statement, the worker bees incorporate the vaccine into royal jelly, which they feed to the queen bee. Once the queen bee has consumed the vaccine-laden royal jelly, fragments of the vaccine are deposited in her ovaries, says Dallin. Then the queen's larvae will be born with immunity to the disease, but this thing is experimental. So they're saying, so hopefully the larvae survive with this new vaccine in their mother's ovaries. Okay. And hopefully it doesn't backfire and we lose even more of our bees. But I guess we'll have to cross our fingers and wait and see as our federal government, the USDA, continues to experiment with crucial aspects of our livelihood. What a time to be alive. Speaking of vaccines, you know that there were like conspiracy theories about mosquitoes being used to transfer it. Well, there's a good reason for those conspiracy theories because this article dates back to 2010. This article was published 2010. Researchers turn mosquitoes into flying vaccinators. Insects could theoretically protect against various diseases, but concept is unlikely to take off. they're saying that it would likely never happen, that vaccines would be spread this way due to ethics. Meaning, some people don't want that. And if you set mosquitoes free with the vaccine, then some people are going to get it who don't want it, and that's unethical. That was ethics back in 2010. I feel like ethics have evolved in a lot of people's minds, and many Americans and people around the world don't believe that you should have decision on whether to have a vaccine. So it's interesting to see an article from 2022 in which they're still doing this stuff. A box of 200 mosquitoes did the vaccinating in this malaria trial. That's not a joke. So this girl right here, she willingly put her arm in a container. There's her arm. I know it's really disturbing. She gets her arm bit up, and the mosquitoes then, I guess, successfully deposited the vaccine into her arm so that she could be vaccinated against malaria. That just happened. That was just published in 2022. So pretty crazy stuff going on. I just hope nobody, unleashes that stuff without us knowing, right? And wear your bug spray. All right. One last crazy story I got to show you guys. I'm here in Houston, and this story about an armed robbery at a Houston restaurant. One of the guys eating at the restaurant had a gun as this armed robber comes in. You can see the robber right there. He was pointing his gun at everyone getting money. Well, this man pulls out his gun and shoots the robber dead, then takes off. The man just moseys out the door, and police are now looking to question the man who killed the armed robber. My former employer, Fox, reporting self-defense. Customer fires 9 shots, killed the man robbing patrons in Houston Taqueria. Let's watch the video here. Police say a customer shot and killed a suspect who was robbing other patrons inside of a Houston restaurant. There's the customer with the gun. So the robber walking around grabbing people's cash. He throws some cash down for the robber. Then he gets his gun ready. Initially, the customer threw his belongings to the ground, and the suspect pointed a pistol at the man. After the suspect collected money from the other patrons, the unidentified customer took out his own weapon and shot. There, they blur out the robber once he's been shot. Police say the shooter then took the stolen money from the suspect and gave it back to the other customers. What a good Samaritan. Not only did he protect lives, but he returned the money to people. Then he leaves before police even show up. The unidentified, look, he just threw his gun. He threw his gun right there, and he looks frustrated. It says he became upset when he realized the attempted robber's weapon was a fake pistol. He's waving goodbye and taking off. It looks like he's concerned now that he might get in trouble because the robber didn't have an actual gun to begin with. According to Houston Police Department, the customer who shot the suspect left the scene, and they want to question him. He has not been charged. Wow, he steps over the body and takes off. Woo, crazy. That's a scary thing with self-defense. Like, are police going to decide it really was self-defense? Probably. He's probably going to be just fine. They're probably going to say it's self-defense. I mean, we all saw the video. It looked like a gun. Everyone thought it was a gun. So you have legitimate reason to protect yourself and shoot back when the man's gun is pointing in your face. Fox interviewed a legal expert who basically said as much. Checking your comments. Thank you for the super chat. The more they desperately scream what it isn't, the more I think the opposite of what they say. I think you're talking about the vaccine, right? I agree. We live in opposite land. Or, yeah, I think I'm like trying to remember what you're talking about when you wrote this comment. So here you go. GMO corn is super bad. Yeah, we live in opposite land. So if we have the establishment screaming at us that we need to believe that things are a certain way, you might want to look at other options for the truth. But the truth is not always the opposite of what the establishment says. So you just have to use your discernment. Go read your Bible where Jesus talks about discernment. It's really important during this time. Checking your comments. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. What a time to be alive. I just interviewed a Ukrainian Holocaust survivor. You will not believe what she had to say about Vladimir Zelensky and Putin. She survived the Holocaust in Ukraine. The Nazis from Germany and Ukraine did the most horrifying stuff to her and her family. Like, I'm gonna upload this on YouTube. Hopefully YouTube doesn't think it's too gruesome to upload, but this was like an insane interview. I interviewed this old, she's 88 years old, so we'll get that up for you guys maybe tomorrow. So be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so when I upload my next report, you see it. Thank you guys so much for your support of my channel. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, we are live right now. But if I upload her interview, of course the interview won't be live because I conducted it this morning. But we're live now. I do a lot of live streams, but I occasionally do uploads as well. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow. Bye.